Okay, it is time to subtract decimals. We are on lesson 9 today, so you should have your Unit 2 math packet opened up to page 13. Up at the top, it should say lesson number 9, subtracting decimals. And just like you learned with addition, that it's very, very similar to how you would add whole numbers. It's very, very similar to how you would subtract whole numbers as well. And when we subtract whole numbers, we're again subtracting place values. So we'll be lining up our place values and using that same traditional algorithm that you've used before. So let's do a little whole number review. And I know that you've done problems like this in the past. If you have 3,457 minus 285, we always have to have that first number on the top because you can't change the order when you subtract. So we would take the 3,457, and when we subtract 285, we don't write the 2 underneath the 3 because the 2 doesn't represent thousands, it represents hundreds. So we put the 2 underneath the 4, and the 8 underneath the 5, and we put the 5 underneath the 7 because we have to have those places lined up. And then we go about our business of subtracting. So remember, you can't change the order, so I have to take the top number minus the bottom. 7 minus 5 is 2. I can't take 8 away from 5. It's not the same as doing 8 minus 5. This is saying you have 5 and you're taking 8 away. And because you can't do that, you'd have to borrow. So I would borrow from this 4. That would become 3. And now instead of 5, I have 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. I can do 3 minus 2, that is 1. And 3 minus a big empty space is the same as 3 minus 0, which is 3. And I, of course, put in my comma, so that would be 3,172. When subtracting decimals, you use the same process. Subtract the matching place values. To do this, set the problem up vertically, and you just line up the decimal points. So if you have 4 and 6/10 minus 2 and 83/100, I need to write the 4.6 in the top spot because I can't change the order that I subtract. And when I go to subtract 2 and 83/100, I need my decimal point to be in the same spot. This 2 means 2 ones, so I need to put that underneath the 4 ones. This 8 is in the tenths place. This 3 is in the hundredths place. This is what it should look like. Decimal points lined up, again like the buttons on a shirt. Now when we were adding, it didn't really matter if I had this empty spot because it just meant 0 plus 3. When we're subtracting, you should fill in the zeros. So I'm going to put a 0 above this, and we already learned that 4.6, that's the same as 4.60. 6/10 and 60/100 are equivalent. The reason we put that 0 is because it's more obvious to now see that you can't take 3 away from 0. The most common mistake I see is that people don't put that and they just bring down the 3. This is 0 minus 3, which you can't do. So you need to borrow from the 6. And that 6 would become 5. And this is no longer 0, now it is 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. Now when I get here, I see, oh, I can't do 5 minus 8, so I'm gonna have to borrow from that 4. So 4 would become 3, and I'm borrowing that 1 by actually borrowing like a 10. So here, now instead of 5, I have 15. I can definitely take 8 away from 15. That is also 7. I need my decimal point to stay in the same exact spot so that I can identify my tenths and hundredths places. And 3 minus 2 is 1. So 1 and 77/100 would be your answer. Again, I do think it's easier to solve these on grid paper so that we're not confusing the places, because if you had this shifted over, we'd end up getting it wrong because you have to make sure you're subtracting the tenths from the tenths and the ones from the ones and so on and so forth. So you can be using the grid paper on here to solve them out, and when we do our whiteboards, you'll want to use that grid paper that I gave you in class to use. So let's do this. Put a letter A in here. And I have 278 and 65/100. So give myself some space here. 278, I'm gonna put this decimal point right on the line, 0.65. And when I set this up, I wanna make sure my decimal point is lined up and right underneath it. So that means that the 48 is gonna go in front of it, and the 28 is gonna go after it. That's like half the battle, just getting it set up correctly. From here, we're doing what we learned how to do a while back. We have to subtract. And we know that we can't change the order, so I can't say, oh, 5 minus 8. Well, 8 minus 5 is 3. This doesn't say 8 minus 5. It says 5 minus 8. So I'm going to need to borrow from this 6 and make it 5. And now this 5 is worth 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. 5 minus 2 is 3. I'll drop down my decimal point so that my 3 is still worth tenths and my 7 is in the hundredths. 8 minus 8 is 0. 7 minus 4 is 3. And 2 minus empty box is 2. So 230 and 37 hundredths. That's really it, guys. You're probably thinking, no, it has to be more than this. It's not too bad. Right, write a letter B. I have 8,220 and 9 tenths. So 8,220.9 minus, this is 39 and 5 hundredths. So I'm going to put my decimal point in. The 39 goes right in front of that decimal point, and then 0, 5. Now, notice there is nothing above this 5 right here. That doesn't just mean I can bring down the 5. This technically means 0 minus 5. Put those zeros in there. I can't take 5 away from 0. I have to borrow. 9 becomes 8, and this 0 becomes 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 8 minus 0 is 8. My decimal point stays put. There's my 3 buttons all lined up. I can't take 9 away from 0. I have to borrow. So 2 becomes 1, and this 0 becomes 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. Can you take 3 away from 1? Last time I checked, you cannot. So I have to borrow from this 2 and bring that 1 over to that other one. So now I have 11 instead. 11 minus 3, 11, 10, 9, 8. And 1 minus empty box is 1, and 8 minus empty box is 1. And I put my commas in always. So 8,181 and 85 hundredths is what you would get. Right, letter C. I have 8.09 to start. 8.09 minus 8 tenths. So when I have this set up, this 8 should be right underneath that 0 because it's 8 tenths. Now there's nothing here, right? So I'm going to put a 0. I can do 9 minus 0. 9 minus 0 is 9. I can't do 8. 0 minus 8 though. So I'm going to borrow from this 8 and make it a 7. And now instead of 0, I have 10. It's magic. 10 minus 8 is 2. Keep your decimal point in the same spot, and 7 minus 0 is 7. So 7 and 29 hundredths is your answer for C. All right, let's try D. And again, at this point, maybe you want to just press pause and try it on your own and then double check at the end to make sure your answers match. Always double check at the end to make sure your answers match, and I don't mind you trying these on your own. So 12,345.05 minus 75.8. So I'm going to put my decimal point in right here to make sure it's lined up. 75.8. This problem looks like that. So you can go ahead and fill in the zeros where they need to go. 5 minus 0 is 5. I can't take 8 away from 0. I need to borrow from this 5 and make it a 4. And now this is 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. Drop down your decimal point so that our place value stays the same. And I can't take 5 away from 4. I'm going to borrow from this 4, and now I have 14. 14 minus 5 is 9. I can't take 7 away from 3. I have to borrow again. So this 3 becomes a 2, and now I have 13 minus 7 instead. And 13 minus 7 is 6. 2 minus empty box, 2. 2 minus empty box, 2. 1 minus empty box, 1. And we put our comma in 12,269.25. All right, we're cruising now. Letter E. I have 67 minus 24 thousandths. And this is the kind of problem that can kind of trip people up a little bit because, well, how do I line up the decimal point if I don't see it? Remember that there's a decimal point to the right of the ones place. So when you see 67, that's the same thing as 67 with the decimal point after it. We just don't include it if there's not a decimal. But in this one, it's helpful because we're supposed to subtract 24 thousandths from that. So that means I need my decimal point so I know where it's supposed to go. So 0.024 is what I'm supposed to subtract from this 67. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my zeros in. Okay, so here, I start all the way over here and I see this 4, and I'm supposed to take, sorry, my arm hit it. I'm supposed to take 4 away from 0 and I can't, but when I go to borrow from here, I can't because that's 0. And when I go to borrow from here, I can't because that's 0. So this, I have to borrow across zeros from. So I'm gonna go all the way over here to the 7. That's the first place I see where I can actually borrow something. And we're just gonna keep giving it to one place at a time until we get to where we need to go. Okay, so here's the 7. I'm gonna borrow from the 7 and it's 6, and that would make this number next to it 10. So now I'm gonna borrow from this 10. It becomes 9, and now I give it to this one. Now I can borrow from this 10, it becomes 9, and I finally have what I need. 10 minus 4 is 6, 9 minus 2 is 7, 9 minus 0 is 9. I keep my decimal point in the same spot. 6 minus 0 is 6, and 6 minus empty box is 6. So 66 and 976 thousandths is what we have for that one. All right, F, 16.04. I wrote that decimal point right on the line, minus 1.408. So this is how it should be lined up. Your decimal points are in the same spot. I noticed that above this 8, there is nothing. That doesn't mean this answer is 8 down here. It means I want to take 0 minus 8, which I can't do. So I do need to borrow from this 4. It becomes 3, and this 0 is now 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. And now again, 0 minus 4, I can't do it. I need to borrow from the 6. It becomes 5. And now I have 10 here. I can do that. 10 minus 4 is 6. I keep my decimal point in the same spot. 5 minus 1 is 4, and 1 minus empty box is 1. 14 and 632 thousandths. All right, 3 left. Again, if you wanted to pause and try these on your own, go for it. We are on letter G. So here is G. I'm going to do 765. Again, I see a whole number there. Minus 54 and 1500ths. So again, if I want to do 54 and 1500ths, that means I need to know where to put my decimal point. When you have a whole number, it's after it, just like that. So I would fill in 54.15 underneath it, just like that. Then I can go ahead and fill in zeros above. All right, this is another one where when I go next door, I can't borrow. So I have to go all the way over to this 5. It becomes 4, and I just gave it to this one right next to it. So now I can borrow from here to give to there. This 10 would be 9, and now I have 10. 10 minus 5 I can do, it is 5. 9 minus 1 is 8. I keep my decimal point in the same place. 4 minus 4 is 0. 6 minus 5 is 1. And 7 minus empty box is 7. So 710 and 85 hundredths. Letter H. I have 0.99 minus 0.88. All lined up just like that. This is a nice one. 9 minus 8 is 1. 9 minus 8 is 1. I keep my decimal point in the same exact spot so that I still have my tenths and hundredths. And 0 minus 0 is 0. So I have 11 hundredths. Last one, and again, if you haven't tried one on your own yet, now's a good chance. Save the best for last. 12,132.6, the decimal point goes right on the line, minus, I want my decimal point in the same spot, 12,128.09. And now that we're all lined up, we're ready to go, I'm gonna put a 0 above this 9. I can't just write 9 here. This is saying 0 minus 9, which we can't do. So we have to borrow from this 6, it's 5. The 0 is now 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. 5 minus 0 is 5. I'm going to bring down my decimal point. I can't do 2 minus 8. I can't take 8 from 2, so I need to borrow from this 3. It becomes 2, and now this 2 is 12. 12 minus 8 is 4. And then I see 2 minus 2 is 0. And 1 minus 1 is 0, and 2 minus 2 is 0, and 1 minus 1 is 0. And I have a number that looks really, really, really weird. You would never see that if this was a multiple choice test. These zeros that are in front of the ones place, they don't mean anything. right? That's not going to change the value. If I put a decimal point there, it would. But because this is my ones place and I have them to the left of that, and there's no other digits besides 0, the correct answer for this one, what you would see, what I expect you to write, would just be 4.51. You don't need to include all of those because they don't change its value at all. They just make it so it doesn't look very simplified. Okay, you're all set. Good luck on your whiteboard problems.